Okay, welcome everyone to our next virtual advisors roundtable. We host 2 or 3 of these each semester to help connect all of the advisors across Region H. My name is Brittany Ramsey and I am the region chair for our region, which encompasses Ohio, Indiana, and Northern Kentucky. And tonight our topic for the next advisor roundtable is preparing for next semester, specifically our spring recruitment and membership programs. So I have a few updates to share with you all from the national office, and we'll review some of the resources that you can take back to your chapters to best help them and support the chapters through their membership efforts next year. And then I'll give some updates from region programming as well at the end. So throughout the night, there'll be a couple questions and topics to discuss. And at the end, we'll do another Q&A session if there's anything we didn't cover through the slides. So let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to start with a really quick national membership update. Some of you have probably already heard this from your section chairs or talking with some of your chapter presidents, but nationally it was reported a month ago that we are still down about 60% in national membership numbers. So that is compared to where we are year over year. In 2019 compared to 2018, we were down about 20%. So we were already seeing a decline last year, and that was something that was already top of everybody's mind at the beginning of 2020. And then obviously the national pandemic hit, campuses started closing, and we had to have that abrupt switch to virtual operations, which I'm sure all of you felt as chapter advisors and probably in your professional lives as well. So with us being down 60% across the board nationally, that's obviously a huge shocking number, and you're probably seeing it in your chapter membership numbers. Out of about 30 chapters in our region, most of them are either flat to last year or they're down in membership. We have only 2 chapters that actually grew this year, which is still a great success to celebrate for those students and those chapters that were able to see the challenge ahead of them through the pandemic and somehow find a way to recruit and grow their membership numbers. But for the rest of the chapters, that's definitely something that I know a lot of our exec teams have been discussing this year and probably discussing with all of you, hopefully as chapter advisors, to make plans for next year and how to recover any losses from this year, how to sustain the membership they do have already currently, and then obviously how to grow in the future when possible. So that was a national membership update that I wanted to share with all of you. The national program chair's name is Brandon Fairchild, and he has a committee of about 20 alumni volunteers from all across the country, and they have been creating and pumping out so many different resources for membership programs at the chapter level. They have done a phenomenal job at coming up with some of the solutions to virtual operations that were necessary back in March and April, and have continued to develop a lot of new things. So I wanted to share those with you in case you haven't seen those from a section chair lately, or any fellow advisors in your chapter. This is really what's been created and developed this year and available for our students to be using on the chapter level to help them through some of the challenges they're probably facing. If you haven't seen this already, I mentioned this in most of our Zoom webinars, just to remind everybody of where to go if you're looking for information. We have a region website, aporegionh.org, and we created a special tab under resources titled Virtual Resources. So we put all of the new documents, PDFs, videos, things like that from the national office or from our region staff here. This is the central hub that all the students are using, and most of their events are posted here as well, to connect chapters that are doing virtual events with each other. So you'll see that there's different groups for LFS, resources, membership, finance, virtual meetings, recorded webinars, and then any updates that come out nationally or from myself or region staff are also posted here. So if you're ever looking for info or you're not hearing from the fraternity often and you think you might be missing something, this is definitely the place to go check and find all the information here. There's letters posted from President Coop, from myself, and any big national announcements that go out, like the national call to service President Coop made, I think back in May. So just a reminder, this is the central hub to head to if you're looking for any resources, or if a chapter president or VP or exec member comes to you as an advisor and is looking for information on something. Most times we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's something out there that can help be a starting point for the students, and we can point them in the direction of one of the guides that are probably already put together. Specifically, here are some of those new membership resources that we were talking about a little bit earlier ago. One of the most important things this year was obviously the virtual recruitment toolkit. Brandon's committee came out with a bunch of different resources like digital elevator pitches or how to start conversations digitally, how to do the virtual student org fairs and things like that and connect with new students or potential new members virtually. So that was definitely a really resourceful toolkit that came out. There is also a lot of different guides and training videos for the membership VPs, for pledge educator positions. There are different supplements that have been added to almost all of the chapter officer guides. So even for the treasurer, for service VP, there's now an appendix or supplement for each of those roles to kind of make it make sense for 2020. So for a lot of the things that exec officers probably had to change in their roles this year, the national office has done a great job of updating some of those guides to have them make it more relevant for nowadays. Lastly, if you haven't seen this already, I'm sure a lot of you have attended them as advisors. There are virtual ceremony supplements now. So if your school, like most of the ones that we have in our region, is continuing to go virtual in January or delaying their move-in dates, if there's any need to do a pledging in ceremony, all of the materials are available digitally this year. So you have the full script online, you have the ceremony PowerPoints, and everything that the students and yourselves as advisors would need to lead those ceremonies, along with the virtual pledge education program. So if the chapter, for whatever, in whatever case or in a case of emergency, needs to switch to having their pledge education meetings virtually, they can actually have the pledges go through the entire pledge education process virtually in a pre-recorded version. So the National Membership Committee came out with that earlier this year, and that kind of takes the stress off of a membership VP or pledge educator if they're unable to hold virtual meetings weekly, or it's easier for them or more feasible to have the pledges just go through a self-guided, self-paced course. That's also one of the new materials available. And then last but not least, on the right, I have a picture of the introduction to APO. That is the new pledge manual. It came out right after Convention 2018. It is completely revised. If you haven't seen this new pledge manual, it probably looks very different from any of the past pledge manuals we've ever had in the fraternity. It is more designed to be an educational manual for the pledge educator or pledge trainer teams. So it's more like what an educator would see in their program for schools. It has a syllabus and it is designed with different modules. So all of the different facets of learning about the fraternity, whether it's LFS or our history or our important symbols and things like that, or our national office structure, those are all broken down into modules that make it easy for pledges or brand new members to go through each of those courses and kind of learn all the different facets of our fraternity. So if you are an advisor and you haven't seen your chapters using this, or they haven't been introduced to it by a section chair, please make sure that's step number one, to make sure they get acclimated to that new manual and they're utilizing that in their pledge education programs. These are some of the new virtual operation resources. These have been out, like I said, earlier this year, as well as some of the new ones coming out this fall, more towards chapter fundraising and service. But just to remind everybody, these are some of the new virtual ops that are out there to help students. I know a lot of our chapters went completely virtual this fall. If not, they had a hybrid system of few in-person events, but mostly virtual meetings. A lot of these things were super helpful for those exec teams. And then lastly, these are just some additional resources to remind you all of what is out there. Your first go-to as chapter advisor should be your section chair. They hopefully have a communication structure set up with all the chapter advisors in the section, along with the local section staff of volunteers. We also have a full region staff of program chairs. There's our region website, the national office. We have been assigned a consultant. The entire region is working with Maggie. She's one of the new consultants this year, and she's been working directly with chapter presidents. So if you haven't heard anything from Maggie or haven't heard a president mention this before, you can check in with your chapter presidents and see how that is going. But Maggie has been working directly with just one officer so far this year. And then next, if you are a faculty advisor or you are able to work with one of the faculty advisors in the chapter, you can always connect with the University Student Affairs Office as well. Several of our universities were really helpful in the beginning of this COVID situation with helping the students with additional resources provided from the university, whether that was Zoom accounts or Microsoft Teams, Google Teams, things like that. So if you are able to connect with the faculty advisor or you are in that role yourself, you can help the chapter exec members, especially the president, find some of those resources that might be available outside of APO. Okay, so for today's topic, we are really diving into chapter membership programs. This is what I wanted to host a roundtable on before the end of this semester, especially just to make sure that this topic is top of mind for all of our advising teams for our chapters. Your chapter presidents and membership VPs should have been meeting with their section chairs most of this month once their semesters had ended, or probably towards the end of their finals weeks. If you haven't heard yet, there was a new form created by the National Program Chair, Brandon, for membership that has never existed before. So it's something brand new for chapters to fill out on Officer Portal, and it's called the Spring 2021 Recruitment Plans. And they announced that a little over a month ago. So chapters have been working hopefully closely with their section chairs and hopefully some of their advisors as well to complete a plan for next semester to help with any potential membership loss that they face this year. And obviously just to continue the goal of growing. A lot of the different topics that they covered in the recruitment training day that they had last weekend, that was a nationwide event that they hosted over Zoom. It was almost the entire day, and it was a bunch of different webinars for students to attend to learn about how to revitalize or improve or revamp their chapter membership programs to help with anything they've been hit with after the national pandemic, or even if they're just looking for new resources or new ideas to continue improving and building their chapter membership programs. The biggest takeaway for me when I was sitting in on some of the sessions was to make sure that our chapters are focusing on 3 facets of membership and making sure that it's not just totally recruitment focused or totally focused on pledge education. And that's really what the majority of the semester exists on. A lot of the times retention is totally left out of the membership conversation when it comes to chapter operations. So that was the biggest takeaway that I got from that. And I wanted to make sure that as advisors and alumni volunteers that we're looking out for these 3 things. We're making sure that it's part of the conversation. We're helping students ask those questions, to think about things outside the box or thinking about something new if necessary, or to improve on something maybe they're already doing super well. But these are 3 really important facets that we want to make sure that membership VPs and the membership committees are totally focused on equally, if that makes sense. So not only just recruitment and getting a big pledge class or a pledge class that makes sense for that chapter size, and then moving on to pledge education, and then at the same time retaining actives and their pledge classes and watching their membership goals and numbers overall. And that's really a yearly program, not something that we just look at in August and September or in May when everybody's about to graduate. Really just having something that's year round. So I wanted to open the floor for discussion. And this is one question that was posed to the students a lot at their special event that they went to a couple weekends ago. And it's really focused on ongoing recruitment. And that's a word that Brandon and his committee used over and over again that day. It's something that we've posed to the students at a lot of their virtual events this fall. And so as advisors, I wanted to ask all of you to see how our chapters can continue to market themselves and engage potential new members or their pledges outside of just a formal recruitment. And unfortunately, I think a lot of our students, even nationally, still use like a rush week or a recruitment week, or maybe they do it for a month. So outside that typical period of time where they're actively recruiting, how can we help encourage students to market and engage potential new members outside of that period? Does anyone have any thoughts or suggestions, or maybe you see your chapters already doing something successful in this realm?
Well, one of the things we asked, we talked to the chapter at Dayton about this year was, imagine that there were no rush or imagine there was no pledge semester at all, or such that pledging was ongoing. And what we kind of laid out for them was, let's say you have your normal rush and 6 people join, but then, and that's owned by one pledge master. And then 3 weeks later, another cohort starts that's owned by another pledge master. 3 weeks later from that, another pledge class starts, and that's owned by another pledge master. So we asked them to think about what would pledge education, but also recruitment look like if it was truly ongoing, and how could they keep bringing people in consistently over the course of the entire year, as opposed to just one point in the fall and one point in the spring.
I think that's a great point, Matt, especially the focus on doing things outside of just that one specific time period or one specific week, and do it more ongoing through the rest of the year. Does anybody else have any thoughts or suggestions on how they would approach this with their chapters? Okay, well, thank you for your thoughts, Matt. I think that's super important to make sure that we're thinking outside the box and helping them focus on recruitment as more of a yearly topic versus just that rush when you get back to campus the first couple weeks, and that's really what they're focused heavily on with recruitment. Russell added in the chat that this is a great question, and most schools only have one semester period of recruitment. And we have, I know for a fact, we have 1 or 2 chapters that have done that in the past where they're only recruiting one semester, but you can definitely open that conversation up to be planning multiple semesters of recruitment. It should be happening multiple times a year. It doesn't even have to happen just once in a semester. So it depends on the makeup of the chapter and how they can handle pledge education and making sure that the pledge classes are getting those 6 to 7 weeks that they need of pledge ed. Or their pledge process. But we definitely want to encourage students to make sure that they're having more than one semester period of recruitment, and definitely want more than a week or a 2-week period of recruitment, like I know a lot of our chapters have gotten in the habit of. These are some tips that we went over at our fall prep meeting, and these are definitely still relevant for prepping for the spring semester. As advisors, it's really important to be that foundation and the structure to help students reiterate the importance of having pledge classes and to continue their membership programs, not only just so we survive COVID, but how we continue operating and how we get another 100 years of chapters existing on our college campuses and continue the life of APO for long after the students are gone from their colleges and long after they have made their impact on their college campuses. So these are some of the points that we've pulled together from previous meetings and from hearing input from students in the national office. But if your chapter is struggling with the idea of whether or not to do a membership program because maybe they went to virtual operations and it might be a little bit more difficult, or they've had trouble getting somebody elected into the membership VP role and they think they might just take a break for a semester and try again next fall. These are really some of the points to reiterate with them and to help foster that conversation and development of membership programs at the chapter level. We want to focus not only just on recovering membership losses from this year, but really reiterating some of these other points, like the importance of bringing in new voices and perspectives and new leadership styles, and not leaving the chapter with a lack of history or experience if we graduate a ton of seniors and haven't taken the time to recruit a new class, have them get trained and mentored before we lose all that knowledge and experience with a giant senior class. It's important to maintain the chapter culture and traditions. It offers pledges, especially in today's age with all of the things that are happening with national pandemic and social justice issues, and just a completely different college campus environment than it has been in a really long time. It gives pledges or potential new members the chance to have that safe space on campus for support and friendship. It also offers our actives the opportunity to mentor new students, which is always such a crucial point of an active experience in APO. And then lastly, obviously, encouraging and ensuring a healthy future for the chapter after the national pandemic has ended or ceased to affect the college campuses. The spring recruitment plan is the form that I mentioned at the beginning of this. These are the different facets of that form that the students have to fill out. It's actually due tomorrow on Officer Portal, so I'm sure a lot of the students have been starting it this weekend and typing out a lot of this information. But the national membership team put out this guide you can see on the right hand of the screen, and it goes through each of these requirements of the form to teach students and advisors, if you're helping them fill this out, with what all these different terms mean. And I have emailed this out to all of the section chairs, but it will also be on our region website. You can take a look, maybe more so in the spring, to help keep the students accountable, help them keep on track with what their guides were, because they're turning them in tomorrow, hopefully. But obviously it's going to be put into play next mid-January. So you can help as chapter advisors to see what their goals were that they set and what their strategies were laid out for, so that you have something to help them track next semester. There's a bunch of different information on how to do their membership calculations and figure out like what their retention rates are, how to set important goals for their chapter membership programs, how to continue to engage potential new members or actives, how to make a detailed calendar for recruitment for really the whole semester or a year-round recruitment program, a budget if needed, and then how to set up or identify wins and milestones. And I think that's probably the key piece for an advisor to help out with as well. Because if a student group, whether it's the membership VP and president or their exec committee working together, if they're setting this all up and they're figuring out what they want their important milestones to be, or how they're going to define success for their chaptership, and work with them on help track something incredibly crucial to chapter membership programs. Unfortunately, the word that we use the least often when talking about it, I'd want to make sure that we're not. Sorry about that. It looks like Zoom kicked me out for a second. Can you all hear me okay?
Much better now.
Okay, so this is our next question for tonight. How is your chapter currently, or how could we suggest chapters to keep actives and associates engaged throughout the whole semester? Especially while there's a pledge program going on, what are things the chapter is already doing or could be doing to help keep those members engaged as well? Does anyone have any thoughts on retention efforts on how to keep actives and associates engaged?
Okay, back in the day, we used to teach in leadership development 3 keys of successful organizations. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. The 3 keys that we taught were communication, communication, and communication. And I think those are still very key today, whether you do it by email, through Zoom, social media, whatever, but you have to keep communicating amongst the chapter to let everybody know what's going on, whether you do, virtual gaming, virtual movie night, virtual service projects, whatever, but you have to communicate about these things to let them participate in the event. So it's communication, communication, and communication.
Thank you, John. That was a good point. And I like the mention of the social media and continuing to communicate as well, because even if it isn't just hosting events over and over again, if you're keeping the communication going, I think that does a lot to keep the brothers connected, especially in case of emergency or in case everything gets switched to virtual operations again. As far as the university goes, it helps the students have some way to stay connected and know what's going on and feel a part of the fraternity still. And let's see, Russell added something in the chat. He said, service projects are always great, but in these times, fellowship is also a great way to keep actives and associates engaged. And that's definitely true. If fellowship programs haven't been a huge thing yet, virtual fellowship events or in-person events is and is connected to each other as well. These are just a couple notes about some upcoming region programming that you can mark down. We have calendars come out the first week of every month on social media and on the website that kind of show the upcoming webinars, but we always put recorded ones on the site later on. We'll be having some officer trainings and roundtables coming up. A lot will focus on membership in January. There will be special workshops on ongoing recruitment, revitalizing chapter membership programs, leading virtual operations if necessary, and then we'll continue with our advisor training program. And the advisor training program is really dedicated to newer advisors or advisors that need retraining on some topics if they weren't trained in the beginning. But we really, really need experienced advisors to attend these programs as well. It completely helps improve the experience for newer advisors to learn from their peers and learn from advisors who have already served in those roles and had the experience to share versus just learning the information off of a PowerPoint. So discussion is incredibly crucial for those events. And if we continue with virtual operations next spring, like I think we're going to, it would be a huge help for any experienced advisors to help attend and let the newer advisors learn from our more experienced and wonderful advisors that we do have in the region. These are a couple important dates as well to mark down and take back to your chapters or your advisory teams. Our sectionals conference in the spring has to be virtual again, according to the national office. So we have set this date up. It will be a virtual conference weekend. We'll have virtual LFS events going on throughout the whole weekend, and the section chair elections will be virtual on that Saturday. Next, we have tentatively scheduled a weekend for our RVC. We had to cancel this year's, it couldn't be in person, so we will still be in Columbus tentatively next year. And then we flip-flop every year from Columbus to Indy just to meet in the two central cities every other year. That's the tentative weekend, so make sure you mark that down. And then obviously the national convention had been postponed until December 2021. I wanted to open it up the floor now. We've gone over our national membership updates. We've talked a little bit about the new membership program resources and structures that we need to be communicating down to the students. But I wanted to open up this forum now to hear from you all if you had any questions on anything that your chapters are experiencing in particular, or anything you've heard, or if you have ideas that you want to suggest to other chapter advisors on this call or watching later on. You can either put stuff in the chat or you can unmute yourself and share for the group, and we'll add to the recording. So the floor is now open, brothers. Does anyone have any questions about membership or something your chapters are facing this year? Or does anybody have a positive share they'd like to talk about with membership? Okay, I am going to open it up kind of one by one. Would each of you like to share a positive from the semester that you saw with your chapter membership programs and maybe one potential thing they could work on for next spring? Whoever wants to start, you could either put it in the chat or you could unmute yourself if you'd like to share a positive and something to work on for next semester.
Well, I'm happy that AGX Dayton met their whole year recruitment goal, which was admittedly not high this semester, or this year, but they met their recruitment goal in just this fall semester. So they're going to be working to have that same level again in the spring. On a improvement area, the advisors, because it was more remote, were even less involved than in pledge education than we were in the past. So I think that's something that they I hope they continue to work on, because these incoming students have never seen us in person, and it's going to be hard for them to develop a relationship with us.
Thank you for sharing, Matt. Who would like to go next with a positive and maybe a goal or something to work on?
I can jump in here if you'd like. The Athens chapter, I thought, did a really tremendous job using the Zoom feature that we had available. The meetings were, I thought, well organized, well attended. We did it all virtually. They did have a pledge class, and we did do the virtual activation. And that also worked out very, very well. Lancaster, the concerns I have there, things I could do a little bit better, because I think they don't get word out timely about, like, exec meetings. We'll get an email maybe an hour before the meeting, or hey guys, we're going to have a meeting, and it's causing a lot of confusion, I think, and lack of participation. Lancaster had one potential pledge, and I think they let him go, or her go. I'm not even sure if it's a male or female. So they need to work on recruiting this coming spring desperately, and obviously retention. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you for sharing, John. I'm going to add what Russell has put in the chat as well. Currently, the two advisors that he is observing have done great with staying active. They have a lot to work on, but he is glad that the current actives have stuck around and are prepared to restore the chapter membership numbers next semester. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Now, my next question for you all is, as advisors, have you worked with the chapter presidents or membership VPs on any plans for next semester yet? Do they reach out to you all as advisors throughout the winter break to help with plans for those types of things, or has it been kind of quiet the last month?
I deal primarily with treasurer and fundraising, so I don't have an answer for that.
Thank you, Matt. And Russell added that he is working with them on the spring recruitment plan, which is great to hear. That's awesome. John, how are things going with OU Lancaster?
I hear from the president fairly regularly, and I work with Dr. Maddox quite frequently as well, exchanging ideas and things of that nature. Being in Lancaster, it's not too hard to communicate and do things. Athens is a little more of a challenge, but I do hear fairly regular from the president. We just had an election earlier this month, so we have a new president starting in January, and I haven't really had a chance to reach out to her to congratulate her and discuss things, but that's on my agenda to get done.
Yeah, definitely. And you also advise the OU chapter, correct? How have they been doing compared to OU Lancaster?
Well, there are two high university chapters that I'm an advisor to, one in Lancaster and the one in Athens. And I think I just said the Athens chapter just had their election, and so they have a new president, and I really haven't had a chance to interface with her, and it's on my agenda. The president in Lancaster, I hear fairly regular from, and the same way with Dr. Maddox, the chairman of the advisory committee. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. I think my internet probably cut out when you were answering the first part of that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to open it up again to the rest of you all. Is there anything that you think your chapters could use help on or more resources created for when it comes to membership? Or is there anything that we could help advisors feel more prepared when it comes to advising on things like chapter membership, recruitment, retention, pledge ed? Okay, seeing no hands or mics coming unmute, I'm going to just add what Russell put in the chat. He included a membership recruitment plan for next semester that I think his chapter president sent along, and that's a really great example of what the spring recruitment form is looking for. So if you look over there in the chat, there's some details on recruitment goals and how to recover loss and what type of events they will do. Matt, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, students really like TikTok, so maybe if the National Membership Committee comes up with some sort of TikTok challenge for pledge classes or recruitment, that might be fun.
That sounds like an awesome challenge for recruitment. Does anyone else have anything they want to share or ask? Okay, well, I am adding the slide here. You can see my contact info here and Tom's contact and our region website again. And that's where all the resources will be uploaded. There will probably be a new tab created for membership. We're working on that right after nationals next week, following the holidays. So there will be a whole tab there for membership if you are looking for anywhere to direct your students if they come up with additional questions, or you yourself encounter something where you want to learn more about a new feature of the membership resources or program that's going on. That will be the location if you can't find it under virtual resources. If no one has any other questions, we can wrap up tonight's roundtable. Thank you all for coming. If you have any additional questions, we have a Region H alumni group on Facebook. Feel free to put any questions or thoughts there, and you can always reach out to me as well via email, and I can help you with your questions. It was great to meet all of you and talk virtually again, and stay on the lookout for future virtual roundtables for our advisors. Have a great evening, brothers.